I'm going to also now. Okay, something. Let me just stop this for a second. Just going to mute all for background noise. If you want to ask something, chime in, please do. Just unmute yourself first. And then now we're going to look at a holiday overview. Get rid of this. Okay. Oh, Shavuos. We're not going to be talking too much about Shavuos today, but this is the background. Torah was given by God to the Jewish people on Mount Sinai more than 3,300 years ago. In here, actually, in the books, it's on 68, 69. Every year on the holiday of Shavuos, we renew our acceptance of God's gift, and God re-gives the Torah. The word Shavuos means weeks. The holiday marks the completion of a 7-week counting period that began during Passover. The giving of the Torah was a far-reaching spiritual event, one that touched the essence of the Jewish soul at all times. It was really probably the most formative event in our history. Our sages have compared it to a wedding between God and the Jewish people. Shavuot also means oaths. From this day, God swore eternal devotion to us, and we in turn pledged everlasting loyalty to Him. In ancient times, and as I said, it's framed primarily as an agricultural holiday. 2 wheat loaves, because it was the wheat harvest, 2 wheat loaves would be offered in the Holy Temple. It was also at this time that people would begin to bring bikurim. Bikurim is a Hebrew word which means the first and choicest fruits. When the fruit crop was started to be able to be harvested, we'd bring the first fruits to thank God, because that was the real payday of the whole year, to be able to bring them to donate them to the temple, to thank God for Israel's bounty. The holiday of Shavuot is a 2-day holiday. In Israel, it's 1 day, but outside of Israel, like most of the holidays, it's a 2-day holiday, beginning at the sundown of the 5th day of Sivan and lasting till nightfall of the 7th day of Sivan. In Israel, also on the holiday ending at the nightfall of the 6th day of Sivan. Women and girls light holiday candles to usher in the holiday in both the first and second evenings of the holiday. It is customary to stay up all night studying from the Torah on the first night of Shavuos. All men, women, and children should go to synagogue on the first day of Shavuos to hear the reading of the 10 Commandments. We generally have an ice cream party just to draw you in a little bit more. As on other holidays, special meals are eaten and no work may be performed. It is customary to eat dairy foods on Shavuot. Among other reasons, this commemorates the fact that upon receiving the Torah, including the kosher laws, the Jewish people could not cook meat in their pots, which had yet to be rendered kosher. On the second day of Shavuot, the Easter memorial service is recited. That'll be the second day of Shavuot. This year it's a Thursday, next Thursday, a week from Thursday. Some communities read the book of Ruth publicly, as King David was passing across on this day, was the descendant of Ruth the Moabite, who's our most famous convert. Okay. We're going to speak about none of this today. That's just an overview of the holiday. The holiday, we say, it's about Torah. Now, when you say Torah, someone comes in here and says, Rabbi, what's the Torah perspective on brain death? Or, something going on in the Middle East or a legal question. Conceivably, there's going to be a Torah perspective. Now, what does it mean? When you say the Torah, I saw the Torah today, or I lifted the Torah. Most of us, the Torah means the Torah scroll that's in the ark, and you take it out. These books are Torah books, but there's the Torah, and then there's the books. In fact, in concept, all of these, if they're legit, they're teaching Torah, because the Torah itself is really shorthand. And the ideas coming out of the Torah are extrapolated later, the Talmud and the Medrash, Code of Jewish Law, and all these books you have here. They have there a restatement of rabbinic civil law. A lawyer, a certified lawyer, looked at Jewish law and restated it in American legal terms. Moses didn't have that. It's all new. It's beautiful. It's Torah, but it's in different forms, and it's truly it's a very necessary expression of Torah. But there's the Torah in the ark, and then there's Torah in the broader sense. I want to talk today about that, because Torah, as we're going to say, Torah at one point, all we had, the only written Torah we had was the scroll. Because originally, when the Jews got the Torah in the desert, and even when they came into Israel for hundreds of years, the understanding was, what they got from Moses was that Torah, transmitting Torah ideas is only by heart, only orally. So if we lived in the Jewish community 3,300 years ago, and we want to study Torah, to come in on a Sunday morning, and we're going to hear someone speaking, we could make little notes to ourselves, but they're just for us if we want. And we'd have to review the lesson for the teacher like 100 times, because you don't have a textbook to take home. Torah, if you want to read Torah, if you're going to open something to read Torah, it's only the Torah. And again, this is going to come up today. It was understood that there would come a time when we have to write things down, because the journey of history didn't allow us to have such great focus to be able to sit and study and remember. And when we're on the run, it's hard to remember. If our teacher said that we need 2 matzahs on Passover or 3 matzahs on Passover, you got to write stuff down. That was a very big deal to take that step, and that didn't happen until the 2nd, 3rd century of the Common Era. So the rest of the time it was all oral. And the Talmud, what we know as the Talmud, is the transition of taking oral law and putting it into writing. And then that's why in the Talmud there's a lot of debate. Is it this way or is it that way? Why is there such debate? Because we've been carrying it over 1,000 years orally. What do you think? There's not going to be debate? There's debate. Here we want to talk about Torah. We want to talk about the preciousness of Torah in our lives, in our homes. Whether it's the Torah scroll or other Torahs. I don't know how many, if you've ever seen a Torah scroll in someone's home. Generally, it's not, you don't see much. The place for a Torah scroll is usually in a synagogue in New York. A couple thousand years ago, if you could afford it, you had one at home. It's the only Torah you had in writing. Okay. So now let's take a look at this. Text 1a. This is a verse from the very end of the Torah. This is on the day of Moses' passing. Moses it's a song. It's a poem which is written in the Torah. He says, listen up, heavens, and I will speak. The earth be my witness. He's talking to the Jewish people. It's a very, very poignant day, the day of his passing. Then he says, actually before that, he says, write this song for yourselves and teach it to the children of Israel. Write this song. You'd think it's the song. It's called Hazino. Write this song for yourselves and teach it to the children of Israel. That's an instruction. Place it in their mouths. So this song will be my witness for the children of Israel. On the face of it, Moses is about to pass away. He gives us this beautiful poem at the end, the song at the end. He says, record this. I'm dying. You're going to history. Write this down. Mitzvah. Whoever it is. Joshua, the leadership, write down this song so that they'll remember. Be a witness. Simple enough. Except nothing's simple. Text 1b. Maimonides teaches us a very interesting thing. He says, as actually a mitzvah for every single one of us. It is a positive command for every Jewish man to write a Torah scroll for personal use. Most mitzvahs are men and women. This is actually more specifically male. The mitzvah binding to write a Torah scroll for personal use. He says it's a mitzvah. Like it's hey, morning. No problem. Just like it's a mitzvah to put up a mezuzah, it's a mitzvah to put on tefillin, it's a mitzvah to eat matzah on Passover. It's actually a mitzvah to write a Torah scroll, entire Torah scroll. That verse was about a poem, but here it says you write an entire Torah scroll. Why? Where does he get that from? Because the passage states, and now write the song for yourselves. Okay, so that's the song. But Maimonides tells us that logically, following Torah parameters, it can't be just the song. This does not only refer to the song, but to the entire Torah, which includes the song. How does he know it means that God is saying, that Moses is saying at the end of his life, that everybody has to write their own Torah? Simple. Because it's inferred from the law, Torah may not be written in sections. You're not allowed to write the Torah in sections. You can only write a whole Torah or no Torah. So how can now you write just the song? Write the song, you got to write the whole Megillah in order to write the song. So Maimonides was he's a codifier, a legal codifier, rationalist par excellence. He says, out of the 613 mitzvahs, it's a mitzvah upon us to write an individual Torah. Okay? Now, we've had a lot of observant Jews all through the years. How many people do you know who ever wrote themselves a Torah? So are we ignoring Maimonides? How did this translate into real life? Let's take a look at 2a. Again, from Maimonides. He says, even if your ancestors left you a Torah scroll, it is a mitzvah to write one yourself. I've got a Torah. Okay? Grandpa passed away. He left me a Torah. I'm good. I have a mezuzah. Grandpa left me a mezuzah. I don't have to write another mezuzah, so I have a Torah. If you write the scroll by hand, so first you have to write, it says, it wants your effort. If you write the scroll by hand, it is considered as if you received it on Mount Sinai. Your effort, we're talking about the idea of receiving the Torah on Mount Sinai, by putting your effort into writing the scroll, then that God considers as though you had just received it on Mount Sinai. What if you don't know how to write a Torah? Which most of us don't know how to write a Torah. It's quite a skill. Commission others to write it for you. Sounds simple, except today it costs about $40,000. So how are you going to get a Torah? So here's the cheaper way in. Even though he repairs even one letter of a Torah scroll is considered to have written the entire Torah scroll. That I can do. Yeah. $25. I got someone to fix a letter. You can do it. So it wasn't a Torah scroll can't have even one letter missing or imperfect. So you have an unusable Torah scroll. And now when you fix it, you transformed it into usable Torah scroll. Well, let's just slide with that. That's my Maimonides. But the mitzvah is for each to write a Torah scroll. That's my Maimonides. I just want to bring to mind what we're focusing on is that's just not practiced. It hasn't been practiced. Even, back in Poland, this has not been a thing we do. And we take Maimonides very seriously and Jewish law very seriously. So what does this mean? Let's take it a little further. Text 2b. Rabbi Yeshua, the son of Abba. This is from the Talmud. Taught in the name of Rabbi Gilo. Taught in the name of Rav. In case they're giving you the whole, they're quoting just to let you know the powerhouses who made the statement. Purchasing a completed Torah scroll from the market is like snatching a mitzvah from a market stall. You could say, I can afford it. I'm going to purchase a Torah scroll. It didn't mean write a check. It meant write it. Put in your effort. As a snatching a mitzvah, I bought myself a mitzvah. It's not the point. Is it's you give something to a loved one on a special day. You don't want to just buy it off a shelf. You can do something. Write a card. Put some effort into it. To write as Torah scroll is equivalent to receiving the Mount Sinai. So Maimonides is reflecting a Talmudic idea is that put something into it. It's about showing your value for Torah. And writing it is the best way to do it. Text 2c. Rashi, who's the primary commentary on the Talmud, and that piece of Talmud, seems to take a different tack. He he performs a mitzvah. Buying it is a mitzvah. You've discharged a mitzvah. However, writing a Torah scroll is a much greater mitzvah. So there's doing it, and there's doing it supercharged. So Maimonides is saying, come on, you got buying it is nothing. He says, okay, you can buy it. At least you got yourself a Torah scroll. Not everybody's going to be able to write it. He says, but it's better if you can write it yourself. Now, let's take a look at this on 74. Let's bring this into the modern era. What happened to this mitzvah? What happened to this mitzvah is nothing happened to the mitzvah. It's just every mitzvah has to be applied to its current time. Yeah. So the Talmud tells us, and as I mentioned before, that originally there was this axiom when we got the Torah, text 3a, teachings that are transcribed may not be recited from memory. Teachings that are transmitted orally may not be transcribed. What was transmitted, the Torah we were given law, writing. We're given a lot of interpretation because the Torah itself is shorthand and it's really not usable on its own. There's not a single mitzvah where you have the application clear from what the writing is. Right? Perhaps one of the most salient examples is Torah says on Sukkos, we're supposed to take 4 species. One of them is the fruit of a beautiful tree. And we've been taking an esrog, like the lemon, the citron, we've been taking that for over 3,300 years. Well, who says that's a beautiful tree? Maybe I like peach trees. Whatever. It's so vague. Our tradition is that Moses explained that, by the way, I mean a citron. Why am I putting it this way? That you look at the Talmud, we'll find out how things are worded. We put on tefillin, the black boxes. First of all, the word tefillin doesn't even appear there. They're called totafot there. They're not described at all. But we're doing them the exact same way, even though our use of leather has changed somewhat. But we're doing the exact same way for 3,300 years. Why do we have to do it that way? Because things were transmitted orally. So things that are transcribed, we should be reading them inside. Things that are transmitted orally we're not supposed to be transcribed. And that's why it was such a challenge to pass on Jewish law and Jewish tradition from generation to generation without having it in writing. And they were so careful about a student not leaving the classroom until you could repeat it back perfectly. And tomorrow I got, what did we study yesterday? Because that's all you got. There's no textbooks yet. Text 3b, as I said, there was a tradition that one day it would be written down because we needed it. So text 3b in the end of the 2nd century and the 3rd century, a great leader, Jewish leader in time under the Roman Empire. His name is Rabbi Yehuda. Why did the holy Rabbi Yehuda transcribe the oral tradition rather than leave things as they always were? Maimonides writes, because he observed that the number of students was progressively shrinking, while the difficulties were progressively increasing. Under the Roman Empire, you really had to watch your back to survive, let alone sit with a calm mind and absorb and remember. The wicked Roman kingdom was expanding throughout the world and growing increasingly stronger. Jews were wandering about and relocating to distant locations. He therefore composed the Mishnah, a compilation of Jewish law. That's the core of the Talmud. The Talmud has 2 sections to it, the Mishnah and what we call the Gemara. He's the one who composed the Mishnah, a compilation of Jewish law for all to study so it would not be forgotten. People they were on the run. We can't study. He said, I'm going to give you something so that when you're in hiding somewhere, this is what we do Rosh Hashanah. This is what we do Passover. This is how we live our lives as Jews. He and his court devoted their lives to teaching Mishnah to the public. That's what Maimonides says. Okay, so now, what happened? Just on the ground in Jewish society. In the 1st century, if you walked into a Jewish home in Israel, also under Roman rule, life wasn't easy. You'd see them probably trying to live like Jews. And you say, you have a Jewish book here? There's no such thing as Jewish books. The Torah scroll is over there. Oh, we don't have a Torah scroll. My neighbor has one. But many people would have a Torah scroll. It was the only Jewish book to have. What would happen 1,000 years later, 500 years later, 1,000 years later? Especially, then all of a sudden, even before the printing press, these people, the Talmud was written, the Mishnah was written. It was all written on scrolls, but you had books. So now it's possible to have Torah books, but not have a Torah scroll. Again, we're not even talking about these Torah books, printed ones, but there was a proliferation in Babylonia from, let's say, from basically 500 of the Common Era till about 1,000 of the Common Era. The whole Jewish community really shifted, and Jewish scholarship migrated to Babylonia, and it was a very, very wonderful time in a way for Judaism. But there were academies, and they were writing things, and they were writing responses. Rabbis are writing things, instructions for Jews around the world. It was primitive by today's standards, but you had Torah things being written. So therefore, what happens in Jewish law? Jewish law will tell us, and this is already somewhat after when there's even though there weren't, when printing presses began, it was controlled by the church, and we didn't get that many Jewish things done. But the fact is that it was there were things, we were starting to have books. So here, this is in the 1500s. Author of the Code of Jewish Law, he says it is a mitzvah to transcribe the 5 books of the Torah, as well as the Mishnah, the Talmud, and the commentaries. He says, whereas Maimonides had said the mitzvah is to write a Torah. A great devotee of Maimonides, but hundreds of years later, says you don't have to write Torah. You can write the Mishnah. You could, if it's Torah ideas, it's also something. Moses didn't mean that you have to only write a Torah. You should, but it has something concrete to be able to read. There's Torah. If the only thing they had was a Torah, that's what it was. But the main thing was to have a Jewish book, or Jewish books. If you look at 4b, let me do this over here. The requirement, this is from a great rabbi in Germany, who was also is a formative figure in the evolution of Jewish law. The requirement to write a Torah scroll was binding on the early generations when Torah scrolls were written for the purpose of study. However, today, and he's saying this back then, hundreds of years ago, Torah scrolls are placed in the synagogue for congregational chanting. Who has a Torah scroll? What? You very rarely walk in someone's house and they have a Torah scroll. Torah scrolls are in synagogues. So the contemporary Jew, even in the 1200s, of means, because it was difficult, and obviously buying books then was not like buying books today, is obligated to at least transcribe the books of Chumash. Chumash is the scripture, Mishnah, Talmud, and their commentaries to study with their children. Have books in the house because it's a value. And like this, we can sit around and we have something to look at that reflects who we are and gives us guidance in life. So the mitzvah, the application of the mitzvah shifts with time, even though Torah doesn't change. But
during the time, like just when the Talmud was written, right? But it's a Mikdash was destroyed, and so
before that,
right? So I think the way of worshiping Hashem went moved from a centralized location in Jerusalem to synagogue to personal.
Right.
And you can see it through the text.
Yeah. So following thinking, what is that? That's true, 100%. So how does that relate to this?
In it becomes instead of worshiping Hashem, something that the priests do, or at least that someone else does for you, something that you do personally.
Yes, so that's true. Everything you just said is true. I think that that's actually an important parallel to this, which I wasn't going to bring up, but since you do. Our form of prayer was in the temple was offerings. Then we can't do offerings. So now we have a siddur, we have prayers, we have a structured prayers which didn't exist, right? We talked to God, and now it's much more formalized. But what did we do? The Kohen was the primary functionary in the temple, in the whole temple. Does the Kohen have to be the one leading the services? A lot of the ancillary things we did not take to the next step because they weren't necessary. We stuck with what it was. The offerings were a heart to heart with God. We want you to have that. Does it have to have everything to resemble that? Apparently not. And here too, if it's about, and what these rabbis are saying differently than Maimonides, saying it's about having Torah substantive ideas, Torah ideas, Jewish ideas in writing. That's what we're supposed to do. Does it have to be a Torah scroll because the only Torah thing was a Torah scroll? No. Maimonides saying he said it's a Torah scroll. They're saying it doesn't have to be so exact. It doesn't mean that because first of all, it probably wasn't as necessary, and second of all, perhaps for my children, or for us to sit around and talk about something Jewish, maybe talking about something that has a more contemporary application will be more engaging to people than just reading over the Torah, which we just did on Shabbos morning. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Yes.
What's the difference between the Chumash and Mishnah and Talmud?
So, okay, Chumash, there's the Torah is the Torah scroll we take out. In a broad sense, you could say Torah, there's written Torah, because Moses passes away. And then after Moses passes away, you have Joshua, you have Judges, you have the prophet Samuel, you have David, and there's a whole history that's also scripture. So that's not called, Torah is a name that it's either very narrow or it's extremely broad. So Torah can mean all scripture. When you say scripture, you don't mean the 5 books of the Torah. Torah has 5 books, right? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. But when you say scripture, you also mean the Psalms. You mean the book of Esther. You mean the book of Ezekiel. So that goes by a term sometimes Tanakh, which is an acronym for Torah, Nevi'im, which means prophets, and Ketuvim, which means writings. That's scripture. Now, if you're looking at scripture that way, then there's a Chumash. What is a Chumash? Chumash comes from the word Chamesh, means 5. Chumash only has one interpretation, the 5 books of the Torah. So you have the 5 books of the Torah are written like it's the same words as in the Torah scroll, but the word a Torah scroll, it has a lot of prescribed details in order for it to be a kosher Torah scroll. In order for us to have it, to use it, in public, in the synagogue, and so on, it's not just having the words. There's a lot, the way that the parchment is treated and the writing, it's very elaborate and very detailed, and again, very, very prescribed, closely prescribed. What if I have a horrible handwriting? There's not a chance I could write a Torah scroll. I don't think. Maybe if I really trained a lot, but it ain't happening. I'm not gonna write Torah. I could write the whole Torah on 8.5 by 11 papers. It'll take me a long time. I could do it. It'd even be legible, probably. That would be a chumash. A chumash. It's printed. It's a book that conveys those 5 books of the Torah. It's not a Torah scroll. And then the Mishnah and what I was said, the Mishnah and the Gemara and the Talmud. So what is it?
Mishnah and Talmud.
Okay, so the Mishnah and the Talmud So the Talmud is also kind of broad. You can't get anything very, very precise, but the Talmud is a name for when the rabbis started to channel the oral understandings into writing. The first step was what's called the Mishnah, and Mishnah was this great Rabbi Yehuda, and put it down. It's very concise. But then for 300 years or so, rabbis in Israel and in Babylonia unpacked that concise language of the Mishnah, and they debated it, and they disagreed on it, and they went to, but they thrashed it out. That's called the Gemara. Gemara is an Aramaic word for study. But Mishnah is a Hebrew word for study. So the Mishnah and the Gemara together make up the we call the Talmud. So if you open up a book of the Talmud, we have them over here. They should have a show and tell, but a book of the Talmud. Actually, I'll show you just in case.
Why not?
For those at home. Also, okay. So you have here. This is the first page of the Talmud. These lines up into here, there's, I don't know if you can see it closer, there's two Hebrew letters which indicate Gemara. So the Mishnah here is, let's say, I don't know, 12 lines, and then the Gemara unpacks it for the next 9 pages. It's not, it's unpacking it. It's not a footnote. But they're thrashing it out. It's the Mishnah is more decisive. But they're just they're not arguing with the Mishnah. They're trying to understand it and trying to apply it. And that's the whole Talmudic thinking. It's all conversation. The whole Talmud is all conversations between rabbis and almost never agreeing. Okay.
Thank you.
So it makes it interesting.
That's a good question.
Yeah, go ahead.
That was a good question.
Thank you. See? Okay. Right. Okay. So now let's take a look at this. When in text 2, whatever, one of the ones we had in the, actually that probably was text 1. It said, write this song. So if you go back to text 1, my Mendy says, the scripture says, write this song. It's an answer to write. God says write. And usually that's the case. But let's bring another verse. It says, with the mezuzah, inscribe them on the doorposts of your homes and gates. Also it says, write it. Is it seen, has it ever been seen as a mitzvah that we have to write our own mezuzah? No. We have to affix our mezuzah. I don't have to do the writing. It's about taking a written mezuzah, making sure I got one kosher written, and put it up so that I can see it, and I can acknowledge the oneness of God when I walk into the room. So not every time the Torah says write is about the writing. It's about what does the writing bring to, and in the case of writing the Torah, it brings us to an idea of having Torah consciousness in our lives, in our homes, with the books. If you look at text 5b, Maimonides writes about the mezuzah. Before affixing the mezuzah to the doorpost, recite the following blessing. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to, not write a mezuzah, to affix a mezuzah, because there's no mitzvah to write a mezuzah. Even though in text 5a we said the Torah says you should inscribe it on your doorpost, which means like it sounds like it's a mitzvah to write it. No, it's not a mitzvah to write it. It's a mitzvah to affix it. We do not recite the blessing when the mezuzah is written. Maimonides writes about that because the definition of the mitzvah is the act of affixing. And therefore, we'll say Maimonides too, just like there, it's not the mitzvah to write a mezuzah. It's not really about the mitzvah of writing a Torah. It's about having a Torah. The only written thing is Torah. That's what you got. There's other things. It doesn't have to be a Torah scroll. The main thing is to have Torah, books of Torah ideas in your home. Yeah.
Does that mean that there's two separate mitzvot that we're talking about here? There's the one to write and the one to recall?
So actually, I don't think anyone sees it that, but I think that it's all about, there's that mitzvah, how do we define it? Maimonides says it's a mitzvah to write it, and his contemporaries say it's a mitzvah to have it. And what does it mean? And to put effort into it, to getting it, but it doesn't have to be a Torah scroll.
So if
It
you,
has to be a book of Torah.
so if you write the mitzvah and affix it, does that count as two?
No.
Or three, you write it, have it, and affix?
You probably get extra credit somewhere, but it's the mitzvah. It's not a mitzvah. I would imagine, and I think I know this from people who are scribes, because I'm not a scribe, that they find it especially meaningful to write their own. But that's because it's yours, the product of your hand. But it doesn't. There's no mitzvah to write a scroll. Thank God, because I don't know how I would do it that way.
And
Okay.
which are the mezuzah?
What's in the mezuzah? The Shema.
Okay.
Shema is like a ubiquitous message to us. It's on the mezuzahs, it's in the tefillin, and we recite it twice a day. It's the hammer at home. It's the idea that God is the oneness of the world, and that's not a story your eyes tell you. So you have to keep saying 1 second. I know that the world looks a little crazy and shallow and all that, but there's godliness everywhere. Take 6. That was a real nutshell. Okay. The reason for this mitzvah, this is from a great authority also who defines it. It's a whole field of study to define mitzvahs, because we have 630 mitzvahs. We know the number. We know it's 248 positives, 365 negatives. We don't know which is which. So you have to define, even the 10 commandments, there's a lot of debate as to what those 10 commandments are. But the way in Torah authorities, I'll have in Christians, there are a bunch of different, you can Google it, because it's not so clear. So here, one of the books that defines it, one of the definitive books that does is called the Sefer HaChinuch, the Book of Education. And here, when it comes to this mitzvah, and this is actually the final mitzvah in his counting, because again, it was the day of Moses' passing, mitzvah 613. The reason for this mitzvah, it is well known that people, the mitzvah of quote unquote writing a Torah, it is well known that people behave according to what is prepared for them. Therefore, God commanded that every Jew prepare a Torah scroll to have with them so they can always read from it and need not walk to a neighbor's home to borrow it. The purpose is to learn to have respect for God, to know Him, to understand His commandments that are more precious and desirable than an abundance of fine gold. We were each commanded to write a scroll, even if our ancestors left us one. This is so that scrolls proliferate among us, so that we can lend them to those who can't afford to purchase them. We want to have more Torah books. Another reason is that we have each have new scrolls from which to study, lest we grow weary of the ancient scrolls our ancestors left us, because they start to, to fade out. Text 7. Studying this from the Rebbe, studying from a book is easier and deeper. In the language of the Talmud, letters enlighten. When we see something, again, for visual learners, it penetrates the brain differently. It shields us from error, because what we learn from a book is not easily forgotten. One can review it at all times, etc. All this provides for the concern that we might forsake our covenant with God. So books are really important. But again, it's about the study. So notwithstanding our respect for Maimonides, the way this is translated, according to just about all the rabbinic authorities that I know of the mitzvah of the Torah, is not to write a Torah scroll, but to have Torah books in your home and value them. Text 8a. Again, go back to the 1200s. Asher ben Yechiel, the one who said, who first said it's not only about the Torah. This is because the mitzvah to write a Torah is for the purpose of studying from it. As the passage states, teach it to the children of Israel, place it in their mouths. It is through the Talmud and the commentaries that we gain a thorough understanding of the commandments and the rules. Therefore, these are the books that we are required to transcribe. So he's saying, don't get hung up. And he's living before the printing press. Write books. copy of books of Torah. It doesn't have to only be a Torah scroll. And in text 8b, we have for a much more contemporary great halachic authority, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. He says we can't know the oral Torah, the meaning of the written text and its rules from studying Torah scroll. It's not like the early generations when they fulfilled the mitzvah by transcribing a Torah scroll because the explanations were transmitted orally. Moreover, they were forbidden to transcribe the oral teachings in those days. Someone comes in here, says, Rabbi, I never studied. I went to Hebrew school, nothing. What book you give me that's going to teach me about Judaism? I'm not going to give him a Torah. I might give him a Torah with interpretation. The Torah itself, it's the Torah, but in order a way to understand, to grasp about what life, what Judaism means in their lives, Torah is where it all begins. But the expression is going to be, I'm going to give a more modern book. Not that it's not going away, God forbid, from Torah ideas, but the expression of it. And this is what Moshe Feinstein was saying, and he was a great leader when I was growing up. He's saying you can't know the oral Torah, and oral Torah is very much Torah. How can you know it from studying a Torah scroll? You need to get the books that lay out the Torah in its entirety. Text 9. This is from Chabad.org. Think about what it would take to write a Torah scroll. An authentic Torah scroll is a mind-boggling masterpiece of labor and skill, comprising between 62 and 84 sheets of parchment, cured, tanned, scraped, and prepared according to exacting Torah law specifications, and containing exactly 304, 805 letters. If it's 804 letters, not kosher. If it's 806 letters, something's wrong. The resulting handwritten scroll takes many months to complete, usually about a year, close to a year. The sheets of parchment are sewn together with sinews to form one long scroll. A Torah scroll may only be written on parchment from the skin of a kosher animal. Before beginning to write a Torah scroll, the scribe must mark off the lines on the parchment like grooves, which you may not have noticed. It's in a Torah scroll. There always has to be the grooves to keep the writing straight. The utensil used for this purpose may not leave any coloring on the parchment. So for me to write the Torah on 8.5 by 11 paper, I can do that. I don't have to do all this stuff. Only black ink is acceptable. Ink of any other color is not kosher for a Torah scroll. In ancient times, the ink used for writing Torah scrolls was obtained by boiling oils, tar, and wax and collecting the vapors. Afterwards, that mixture would be combined with tree sap and honey and then dried out and stored. Before its use would be mixed with gallnut juice. Nowadays, scribes prepare ink using gallnut juice and gum. And the black color is achieved by adding various tints. Okay. The scribe, to go further, writes with a feather pen or reed pen, filling its tip from the ink. An iron pen is not proper for two reasons. It may puncture the parchment. And iron is often used to make weapons of death and destruction, both of which oppose the intent of the Torah. The letters of a Torah scroll are written in the Assyrian script, quote unquote, because we call it, I'm not sure exactly how it got called that way. It was, at least at one point in Assyria, it was used. It's a very specific type. It's called Katav Ashuri, Assyrian script. That's the only way you can write a Torah. The various scripts or fonts in which Hebrew is commonly written or printed are not valid. The lines must be perfectly straight and even. Numerous laws detail the precise figure of each letter, and if even one letter is missing or in some instances merely cracked or smudged, the entire Torah scroll is not kosher. A printed Torah scroll, even if its letters conform to the required form, is not valid. The scribe may not rely on his memory, must copy the letters letter by letter, word by word from a kosher Torah scroll or a copy of a certified kosher scroll. The Torah scroll, especially the names of God contained therein, must be written with utmost purity and devotion. It is therefore customary that the scribe immerse himself in a mikveh ritual pool before beginning his work. He also recites a blessing at the outset of his work, and before each time he recites the name of God. Writes the name of God. It's a lot of work to write a Torah. And I guess you can see why, as time went on, we say, okay, let's make this more applicable to people. Not only because in the spirit of what was meant, that it should be Torah, and it's just not reasonable for us all to write Torahs. Text 10.
I guess this is a big topic, but why this specific font?
Say it again.
They have a specific
Font.
font.
Yeah. They don't call it a font, but in today's term, it's a specific font. When you go up to the Torah, you see it's a specific, that's not used anywhere. It's used in mezuzahs, it's used in tefillin, it's used in Torahs. And in Israeli, they'll be able to do it, but they have to work with it because it's like sometimes looking like Old English, there's some that have the letters.
So it's because it's the most traditional, I guess.
The tradition was when it was established that it'd be written only in a Syrian script. Now that didn't come from Sinai, but that's the way the rabbis established it. Okay. Text 10. Also from the Rabbi. In the earlier generations, the commandment of now write for yourselves was to write a Torah scroll. This triggered many ancillary requirements, such as writing with mindfulness on a tent and scored sheet of parchment, writing the entire book, not just a portion. In other words, the fact that we're writing a Torah scroll added many conditions and obligations and requirements to the mitzvah. It is self-understood that when the mitzvah was modified to include the Pentateuch, which means the Chumash, the 5 books of the Torah. So we'll just see something here. Okay. And the Mishnah, the Talmud, and their commentaries, the requirements that pertain to writing a Torah scroll didn't carry over. You can write it however you write it, as long as it's legible. We don't need to write these books ourselves. Commission someone to write them for us or repair them. We just have to get them. These books do not require such writing methods. They don't even require a human to write them. They can be printed by machine. So long as the book is in written form, even if it was accomplished by a monkey dancing on the keys, the obligation to study it and place it in their mouths can be fulfilled. The Rebbe didn't actually say monkey dancing on the keys, but his language was, even if it's through the action of a monkey. What does that mean? What if I have someone who doesn't understand at all what they're writing? They're just following. I get sometimes I have to do engraving on stones, gravestone, headstones. The person who's sending to me isn't Jewish; they can't read Hebrew. But they said this letter write 2, this letter write 3. You write a code so they can do it, but that's why I always have to check it over because they have no idea what they're writing. But if they wrote it correctly, kosher, as long as it's there. What the Rebbe is saying here also, it doesn't make a difference if someone was copying a book that makes sense of Torah and they don't understand what they're copying, they wrote it down, doesn't make it illegitimate. The ideas are there. They couldn't write a Torah that way. A Torah scroll has to be written with intent. But here it's just about the ideas that the book conveys. And if you look also from the Rabbi, in previous generations, this commandment was fulfilled through writing a Torah scroll. When one wrote a Torah scroll, it was like receiving the Torah in its entirety at Mount Sinai for the first time. This experience inspired one to study the Torah and observe its traditions in their entirety. However, this applies to a degree in all places and all times when we purchase Torah books and study from them. And this is really where we're going. God gave us a Torah at Mount Sinai 3,300 years ago. That is, and I was mentioning Shul yesterday, that's been our Jewish faith for 3,300 years. And not that we need to support everyone else, but 2 billion Muslims believe that, 1.5 billion Catholics believe that, 1 million Protestants believe that. So more than half the world's population, at least in principle, believes that we stood a mountain and we got it. That's the core of what is. Torah is really important. Whereas at one point, we expressed our value for the Torah by writing our own Torah because we wanted something concrete in our homes, a Torah book. Today, you don't have to write it. You should have Torah books. You have Torah books so that you can look at them and it sets the ambiance in the home that we have Torah books. Text 12. From everything we have learned, we can understand how important it is to encourage every Jew to have Torah books at home, and if possible, a home filled with Torah books. At the very least, every Jew must have the basic Torah texts, prayer book, Pentateuch, including the entire biblical canon. That's it. Okay, so well, I mean, the way it came out in English is not correct, because the Pentateuch is not the entire biblical canon, and in the original, it's saying the Pentateuch or the Tanakh, the entire, or even the entire biblical canon, Mishnah, books of Jewish law, etc. And we must study them and place them in our mouths, as Moses said on the day he passed away. Well, let's take this. This is the final text. This is an article from Chabad.org. How far can I trace my love of books and libraries? Israel's third president, Zalman Shazar, asks in his 1967 memoir. To the time, I believe, now Zalman Shazar grew up in a Chabad family, so he's going to reference that. To the time, I believe, when at the age of 8 or 9, I was permitted on the eve of Passover to help Father air his books and dust them to make sure that they were absolutely free of leaven. Writing more than half a century later, Shazar would still recall how his father's holy books were arranged, despite the lack of a written catalog. It was self-understood that the Tanya, that's written by the founder of Chabad, who President Shazar was descended from, small and thin as it was, should stand alongside the large Torah, or another book also written by the founder of Chabad, so well bound in black cloth, and in the vicinity of the Likutei Torah, another book written by the founder of Chabad, which resembled the Torah or in size and binding. Then there was the old rabbis, and the old rabbi, the Alter Rebbe, is a way we're referring to the founder of Chabad, Rabbi Shnezalman Vladi. He also composed the Siddur, a prayer book, 2 square volumes full of wine stains on the pages that contained the Passover Haggadah and spotted with tears where the Rosh Hashanah Amidah prayer appeared. Anecdotal evidence of this sort, testifying to the impact of a home library on a child's development, has long been around. But recent academic studies, conducted years after the Rebbe's call for people to have Jewish books in their homes, concluded that there's an undeniably strong relationship between a home full of books and a child's academic success. One such study, led by the University of Nevada Reno sociologist Dr. Mariah Evans, together with teams from the Australian National University and the University of California, Los Angeles, explores the effects of home libraries on the development and progress of children growing up. The 20-year-old study's conclusions found that no matter in which of the 42 countries this research had taken place, no matter the culture, socioeconomic status, or the academic level of the parents, children with more books in the home will read better, achieve higher academically, and overall succeed more. A home full of books makes clear the values, culture, and atmosphere of the home for all of its inhabitants, children and adults alike. A home that respects learning will plant the seeds of education in the children raised there. Similarly, a home that reveres Torah books and teachings will have a strong positive on the family living within. The 2017 study, which expanded on an earlier 2010 study, further highlights that every added book has a commensurate additional effect on the child's education. Even when a home has already been classified as a bookish one, there is no cap to the number of books, and each book acquired leads to even better results. Further, the very act of buying books proves the value of learning to the children in a way similar to owning them. Not coincidentally, the Rebbe underlined the same idea speaking on the 5th of Tevis 5751, that's 1991, when he delved into the meaning of the campaign's name, Bayit Malei Sfarim. We have in the Rebbe created campaigns, go out there and encourage women to light Shabbos candles, put on tefillin, mezuzah, called Mitzvayim. He had these campaigns. One of the campaigns was to try to encourage people to have homes with Jewish books. And he called it Bayit Malei Sfarim, a home filled with books. He explained that this meant quite literally full, the ultimate goal being that every inch of the home be packed with Torah books. To fill a home completely with Jewish books would require that it contained nearly every Torah book ever printed, the pursuit of which would never be satisfied. In other words, the appetite with which an individual approached building their Jewish library and the shaping of the Torah-rich environment needed to be like the pursuit of Torah study itself, endless. And what he's saying here, fill a home complete with Jewish books would require that it contain nearly every Torah book ever printed. No, you could fill a house and you won't even get close to every Torah book printed. Okay. So now let's do the key points. Conclude. Number one, the Torah commands every Jew to write a Torah scroll and study from it. Number two, studying from a book offers many benefits, including improved comprehension and retention. Number three, there was a time when the only Torah book was the Torah scroll. Today, there are many books. Number four, we fulfill this commandment today, not necessarily by writing a Torah scroll, but by purchasing a library of Torah books. At a minimum, we should have the basic Jewish texts. And number five, every Jewish home must have a Jewish library. The more, the merrier. So that conclude. Is there any questions? We can continue. If not, God willing, we'll see you next week. Have a question? No? Okay. Okay. See you next week, God willing.
See you next week. Thank you.